Hi everybody, welcome to art class. It's going to be a little different today, but we're going to learn about an artist that was with the founder of the abstract movement. His name is Wassily Kandinsky. Some of you have learned about him in art class before. I would like you to watch this video that's coming up. You'll learn a little bit about him, and I'll see you when it's all done.
Hello, welcome to artistinschool.com. My name is Paul Priestley. Today I'm going to be telling you 10 interesting facts you did not know about the artist Wassily Wassilievich Kandinsky, the great Russian artist. He, along with two others, Mondrian and Malevich, are the three artists that are credited with the idea of creating abstract painting. Fact number 1. He was born in Moscow in Russia in 1866 to very wealthy parents. He was very intelligent. He could play the violin brilliantly by the time he was 9-10 years old. He went off to university and he became a law professor at Durpat University in Moscow in 1892. Fact number 2. He married a girl called Anna, but in 1896 he decided to go on a tour of Russia. During this tour he saw lots of folk art like this, which fascinated him. He also saw some paintings by the French painter Monet, like these here, haystacks. But when he looked at them, he couldn't work out why the artist hadn't finished them properly, painted them in great detail. And he was fascinated by the paintings, so much so that he decided to give up being a law professor and to become an artist. His wife was not pleased. Fact number 3. In 1896, Anna, his wife, leaves him and he goes to Munich to start his art career. He enrolls at a private fee-paying art college, but he is not impressed with the teaching, so he leaves and he joins the Munich Academy of Fine Arts, and he stays there for a few years. Fact number 4. While at art college, he meets a girl called Gabrielle Mutter. And during the next few years, they travel Europe. And in 1903, they end up in Murnau, in southern Germany. And this is where he begins to experiment with the use of colour. For example, why paint a tree brown? It could be pink, it could be orange, it could be green. Why do the leaves of trees have to be green? They could be purple. He began to experiment, like these pictures here. Fact number 5. Kandinsky is a very conservative individual. He always wears suits, he always looks smart. In fact, his studio is organised almost like a chemist's shop, if you look at it here. And he'll often be seen painting in a suit, often a white suit like this one here. Fact number 6. Between 1909 and 1910, he meets a group of other artists, Franz Marc, August Macke, and they begin to join together and they form a group called the Blue Rider. They begin to experiment with painting and they develop the idea of linking spirituality to painting. Painting's also influenced by music at this time, and Kandinsky develops his own form of iconography, which is a posh word for drawing figures and things of that sort, as you can see in these paintings here. This is the time where his paintings develop into almost abstract pictures. Fact number 7. In 1914, he returns to Russia at the outbreak of the First World War. And he does little painting, but he develops teaching. He begins to teach art students his ideas on colour and his own form of iconography, his own way of drawing. He also teaches them about linking art to music and other abstract concepts, because if you think about it, you can't put a piece of music on a table and say, paint that, because you can't do it. What you've got to do is paint the visual equivalent of it. And that is quite difficult to do. But this is what he was experimenting about. Fact number 8. In 1922, he was invited to teach at the Bauhaus in Germany. The Bauhaus was an amazing place. The Bauhaus linked together artists, potters, designers, fashion designers, dancers, and got them all to work together to produce things. The Bauhaus invented flat pack furniture. These things were invented in the Bauhaus in 1926, and yet they look so modern today. Kandinsky taught at the Bauhaus. He taught colour, he taught design, and he linked it with psychology and spirituality. But unfortunately, the Bauhaus was so revolutionary that in 1933 it was shut down by the Nazis. Fact number 9. Because the Bauhaus had been shut down by the Nazis, and because Kandinsky was Russian, he was persecuted. So he decided to move to Paris. But the problem with being in Paris was that he was Russian and his work wasn't really accepted by the French people. Although the French artistic elite liked his work, but he sold few paintings. So to ingratiate himself with the French, he decided to become a French citizen in 1938, but his work still didn't sell. Fact number 10. In June 1940, the Germans marched into Paris. Kandinsky, amongst lots of other artists, had his work declared as being degenerate by the Nazis, so his work couldn't be sold. And unfortunately, in 1944, he died in obscurity. But we must remember that Kandinsky was one of the founders of abstract painting, and that makes him important. Thank you for watching artistinschool.com. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, perhaps you could give it a like. That would be much appreciated. If you really enjoyed the video, then you can click up here and subscribe to my channel. That'd be wonderful, and it will be greatly appreciated by me. Thank you very much.
Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you learned a little bit about Wassily Kandinsky from the video you just watched. I find that Kandinsky's work is really interesting when you think of how he was one of the very first to paint in this style. His way of thinking about colors and shapes was unique, and I think it reminds us that although we might not always understand a painting or a piece of artwork, it doesn't mean that the artist didn't have thought and intent behind what they were doing and what they put on their canvas or paper. For example, it is said that Kandinsky thought of the circle as the most peaceful shape and that it represented the human soul to him. Think about that as we look at our inspiration painting. This one is called Squares with Concentric Circles, and it was painted in 1913 by Kandinsky. He used watercolor paints called gouache and crayons on regular paper. It is probably his most recognizable work, and what I find really fascinating about this is that the original one is only about this big. And it was just a study he did for himself so that he could figure out what colors looked good together and how they played up against each other when they were next to each other. He used it as a reference for himself when he created some of his much larger pieces of work. Remember, color was really powerful for Kandinsky because he had something, remember, called synesthesia, where he could hear colors and see sounds. It is interesting that as we look at what's basically considered a sketch to Kandinsky, ended up being representational of all the work that came later. I like this work a lot. The colors, the shapes, but I wonder what you think of it. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you like the colors? Do you like the shapes? Would you do something similar or different? Well, I think when you get a chance to do our project, you'll get to explore some of those questions. All right, welcome back, everybody. So here is our inspiration painting. Remember, it is by Wassily Kandinsky. It's called Concentric Circles, He didn't have very clever names for his paintings and things. Often they were named after pieces of music that he listened to. But remember, I told you this one was just a sketch, a study for color. So he really didn't worry about naming it. All right, so today I have some projects that we're going to do, being inspired by this. You're going to need a few things, and I know you're at home, so you're going to just have to do the best you can. It would be great if you had a pencil. It would be great if your pencil had an eraser or you had another eraser. Just do the best you can. If you only have a pen, you can make it work. For some of the things, you might want some glue. I have a pencil sharpener. If you have one of those, that's great. You might want a Sharpie. You know I like Sharpies a lot. And you might need a pair of scissors. Lastly, you need something to color with. I only had glitter crayons, which weren't so great. I happen to have some oil pastels, which you also know I like. And I had some colored pencils. I'm going to use the oil pastels. I probably would have used crayons or markers, but I didn't really have any good ones. You use whatever you've got. For the first project that I'm going to show you, all you really need is a piece of paper and whatever you're going to color with. That's a good place to start. The first thing you're going to do is take your piece of paper. I have a piece of large drawing paper. Yours might be smaller, but either one will work. It's okay too if it's a color or it has lines on it. All of those things will work. First thing you want to do is fold your piece of paper in half. Now, I decided I wanted my sections, you can see that I made it into sections, to look like squares, but it would be fine if you just folded it in half and then folded it in half again and then folded it in half again, and that would make it more rectangle-like. But fold your paper into sections. However many they end up being is totally fine. Then you're going to take each one of your sections, kind of like Mr. Kandinsky did, and you're going to draw what's called concentric, which means going out from the middle. Remember, a spiral is one line. A concentric thing has all their own lines. Think about like the Target logo. Those are concentric circles. So whatever you're going to use, their oil pastels or your box of crayons or your markers or whatever you've got, just start in the center. Now, remember I said that Kandinsky thought a lot about colors. He thought about what colors look good next to each other, what colors play off of each other. We've talked a lot about that in the art room. Often I have you look at the color wheel, think about what's across from something or what's next to it. Remember about warm colors and cool colors and complementary colors. All those things are important to think about as you pick the colors that are going to go onto your concentric circles. Now, I might pick ones that are similar to each other, like a dark orange and then a light orange, and that will look one way. But I also might want something that's going to really make something pop and look different. Remember, that's more about complementary colors, things that are across from each other on the color wheel. So blue and orange look really cool next to each other. And you can see it doesn't really matter if my circles are perfect or if they kind of run into each other. Now, the nice thing about oil pastels is it's really easy to just blend them by going next to each other. You'll have to find out from whatever you're using, whether it's your crayons or your colored pencils or your markers, what works best with them. Do they like touching each other? Do they want to just go right up close? But whatever you're using, work carefully, work slowly so that you can make sure that you're doing your very best job. All right, so as you get out towards the edges, and you can have as many circles as you want. I made some of mine pretty thin, but you can make some of yours thicker if you want. But when you get out to the corners, I'll just show you on this one corner, you're going to want to just go out to the very edge. So I'm going to outline my edge first so that I don't go into the next section. So you can see then it's not so much a circle, it's a little bit more of filling in. And I would just fill in all of my squares until I'm all done. Now you could leave them like that. You could cut them apart and make them into cards or something else. But that wasn't the only project I thought about when I thought about Mr. Kandinsky. So let me show you some other options. Maybe you've done something like this before, or maybe it's just not super interesting to you. Another possibility is you get something to trace, you need your pencil, and you get another piece of paper. And this time, you trace some circles. You can use all different things. We had some takeout food and I used this, but you could use the lid to something, or you could just draw a circle too. You could outline your circle with Sharpie like I did with these. You could even outline each circle with Sharpie if you wanted to. This one I drew with my glitter crayons. This one I did with colored pencil, and this one I did with the oil pastels. You can do whatever you want. Now, what I thought would be cool is, once you've made a few of these, you could cut them out. Remember, cut slowly and carefully, especially if you're one of the younger kids and you still need some practice at cutting. Remember, big alligator bites, and move what you're cutting, not your scissors. All right, so now I've cut this out, and I could easily now color the other side. So let's pretend I've colored the other side. Then if you have a hole punch, you could use a hole punch. I don't happen to have a hole punch at my house. We have lots at the art room, but I don't have any here. So you can either have a grown-up help you, or if you're a big kid, you can do this by yourself. Carefully, don't poke your finger. You can just poke a hole in it. Then you could put a piece of string or yarn, and since it'll be colored on both sides, you could hang them up. You could hang it from a window. You could hang a whole bunch together like a mobile. Maybe you could attach it to a stick you found outside and make a mobile to hang. Anyway, I thought they would be cool if you made a whole bunch of them. All right, lastly, here's another idea. You can take a piece of paper and pick a smaller circle and trace a whole bunch of them. Color a whole bunch of them, and then cut them out. But I was thinking some people might like to do something a little more three-dimensional and not just do flat drawing type stuff. So what you would do is get some cardboard from your recycling, tell mom you need to save something. Cereal boxes are great for this. I used my Ritz container box. And I drew a tree on one side of it, cut off all the extra bits. And then I cut off the folded part, or another part of the box, like this part I haven't cut off yet. But I cut it off, and you can have a grown-up help you with this part. Cut a couple slits in there, cut a couple slits in there. This, as you can see, that's the nutritional part of my box. And then I could just make it stand up. So it's sort of 3D. I could use my marker or my crayons or whatever I'm using and draw some cool bark on here, make it look really cool textures. That would be really awesome. Then I thought I could use my glue. If you hopefully have some glue, you could use tape if you had to, but glue would probably be better. And I could glue these circles all over to make where the leaves of the tree would be. Again, not only have I thought about the colors that went into each circle, but maybe which circles have to go next to each other. I'm sure there are lots of other projects you could come up with where you're inspired by Mr. Kandinsky's artwork and play with color. I hope that you all create your own amazing drawing or painting or sculpture. And then, if possible, either you or maybe your mom or dad or someone can take a picture of it and post it so that we can all see it. All right, folks, have fun, make some art.